Hi everyone, welcome to a design programming pro tips video. In this video, we're going to be looking at a topic called debugging. This can cover anything from why are there red squiggly lines all over my code, through to it runs but then it just gets a white screen, and then extending into it works, kind of, but it's not really what I'm looking for. I'm Sam, the other tutor Sam in the course, and I'm going to be taking you through this today. So let's start by looking at the first type of error and diving into some code. So over here we have a processing sketch. Hopefully you're a little bit familiar with this by this point in the code. So the first type of error we're going to be looking at today is I just get red squiggly lines over my code. It doesn't even run. So this is what's called a compile time error, something which JavaScript, the language behind processing, well, p5.js, has picked up as it's been looking at your code and says, look, I don't really understand what's going on here. I can't run this. I don't have enough information. It's not clear enough. I mean, JavaScript's pretty liberal. It'll try and run just about anything. But as you know, there are some ways to stop that from happening. So for example, we take out the parenthesis behind the setup function on line 4. This is a syntax error. We get a nice red squiggly line from the editor telling us that something's not quite right. And if we hit run, then down the bottom here in our console, we get this error message. And this error message, syntax error, missing variable name, it's probably not the most helpful, but that's what JavaScript has found. And now we need to work out how we're going to use the information that JavaScript has given us to solve this problem. So, quite helpfully, over here, JavaScript tells us the line number that this error came from. So what this means, this is a compile time error. It's to do with syntax. So it's all to do with how JavaScript is parsing or understanding the code we've given it. And the way it does this is it starts at the very top and it's going to work its way down. And then when it hit line 6, that's when it realized something was wrong. So if I was to solve this, I jump down here, I look at the line number, jump up to line 6, and I take a look at it and I say, well, line 6 is doing what it should be doing. I don't see anything wrong with it there. And so in that case, because I know that JavaScript works down from the top before it hits this line, I'm going to start working back through this. So I say, okay, that's fine. What's the next line? Line 4. Oh, there's the error. We got rid of the parenthesis after the setup function. Put that back in. Everything's fine. And now we can run our sketch again. Ooh, something's not right. We've got the background, but we don't have the ellipse that's in our for loop. Let's pull this up and, ooh, sure enough, here we go. Here's another error. So this is the second type of error that you probably already found as you've been writing processing sketches for this course. So once again, our error says line 13 and reference error. CNTER is not defined. So what's happened in this case? How have we arrived at this point? Why have we got this error? Well, the astute reader has probably already noticed that we have misspelled the variable name. But why is this a problem? Why does it happen at this point in the code? So, like we said, this is a runtime error. So this is happening after JavaScript has looked at our code, understood it, built its own version of the program that's going to run, and is executing that. So it started the execution. Once again, from the start of the program, we've defined our constants up here. We've gone into the setup function. We've executed create canvas. We can see the canvas sitting over here with the background that after it jumped into the draw loop for the first time, background's been set. So next we hit our for loop. We've run through here, and then we get to line 13 as indicated over here. So line 13, it's started executing this line, so it's drawn the background, started running the for loop. It's the first iteration of the for loop. It draws ellipse. It goes to get this value here, CNTER instead of center, and it's going to start looking for this variable. So it's going to look inside the for loop. It's going to look inside the function. It's going to look up here, and then it's going to say, "Ooh, I don't have any reference to this. Get me out of here. Something's wrong. Let's abort this. Pull on the brakes. Pull on the brakes. We can't do anything with this." So once again, if you were to solve this, we would look at line number, we jump over here and say, oh, yep, cool, C intel, that's meant to be center. Put that in, and then we can hit run. Great. So now we've fixed those problems, and we can see our lovely circle of circles in our sketch. So that's all working. So these are the two main types of errors that you see in JavaScript. But now let's start going into the next level, which is how to program to avoid these errors or make it simpler to solve them, while also looking at how to solve the issues of the program is doing something, but it's not really what I want it to do. So we need to look at how we're going to address some of these challenges, and we can do this with another demonstration. So the next sketch that we're going to work on and do a bit of live coding is going to be a circle that's going to expand, reach a certain size, and contract back down, and expand and contract back down, and keep repeating that. You guys have probably already done more complicated sketches than this, but it'll give us a good example to work with. So I'm going to clean up a bit of the rest of the sketch here, get rid of this, we'll leave the background there because we're always going to use that. We're going to leave that there, but we're going to get rid of circles limit, and we'll leave the center variable there because that's kind of useful. So the first thing that we want to do here is we want to work in small steps. So as you might have noticed, as you write more and more code, there tends to be more and more errors that sneak in. So if we do a change, run the code, do another change and run the code, it allows us to keep in mind exactly what we were changing so that when something goes wrong, we know that it's almost certainly to do with that change. Sometimes it can be a little bit complicated to work out why it's to do with that change, but at least you still know where to start looking for a problem. So we've removed that extra piece of code. We're going to run the script, make sure we haven't left anything we didn't mean to. Excellent. So as we expect, we get the canvas popping up with our background. Great. So the first JavaScript technique that we can use to try and work out what's going on inside our program is logging to the console. So just for the sake of the argument, let's say we want to know what the width and height of our sketch is after these calculations here have been run. You can probably work out what it will be, but for the sake of the argument, let's give this demonstration. So we're going to use a JavaScript call called console.log. So what this is this is addressing the console down here, and it's calling the log method. We're sending a log message. You'll look at this soon enough in the course, but for now, we're addressing the console and sending a log message to the console. So in this message, we're going to say width and height, and then after this, we can put as many arguments as we want after this. We can put the width variable and height variable of our sketch that processing has filled in for us after we've run the create canvas, and we can find out what it's been set to. So we've made a change. Let's run this. Great. So now you can see down here, we have width and height, and as expected, it's 400 and 400. So as you can see, this is a relatively simple example, but you can imagine how this can be useful if, for example, you wanted to find out what's happening to a variable in a for loop. Your why is my loop not ending sort of problems. Now, there are other ways that we can also get information out of it. But this is one tool that is useful across a lot of JavaScript applications and gets you started in the right direction. So let's move on to the next part of our sketch. So we've got the foundations. Now, first of all, what's the core thing we need? We said we wanted to have an ellipsis that's expanding, shrinking. So we're going to start with an ellipse. Just going to put our function in, and we're going to start with draw it around the center, and let's start with, say, size of 10. Great. So we made one change. Had a typo while we're at it. Made one change. Let's run our code. Okay, good. Now we have the ellipsis down there. Great. Let's stop that. So the next thing we said we wanted was we wanted it to expand. So that's the next feature we're going to work with. For that, we know that we're going to need a variable that is global above the scope of the draw function. So we're going to say let circle size equal, we'll start with 10 as well, just like we had here. And we'll drop that in and replace that variable there. And could run it here if we really wanted to, but it's not going to do anything. So let's add an increment to that. Excellent. Circle is expanding. It's exactly as we planned. And now it's expanding off the screen. Okay, so we know the next thing we want to do is we want to stop the circle. But the question is, where do we want to stop this circle? For this, we could just reach over here for a handy console.log function and drop this in. And we could just say circle size and grab our circle size variable, drop that in there, drop capital because I'm being pernickety, and there we go. Now we have logging of the circle size down here. Now, you might have decided already, or you might have noticed already, that this is kind of useful because we can see what the maximum size it got to was, but it is printing out every single time the draw loop runs. So there's another trick that we can use, and this is processing specific. Now, is we can use the text function to draw text on our sketch. So this one is pretty easy to use. Text function, and then we can say circle size, and in this case we're going to use the append operator of the string, or the concatenation operator. You can look up the difference between those two terms in your own time. And what we're doing here is we have the string, the words we want to print, and we're going to add in the number circle size. And JavaScript makes that all work for us, which is all very generous of it. And the next parameters are where we're going to draw this. So we're going to draw this 10 across and 20 down. And we're also going to set text size to 20, just to make it a little bit easier to read. So, made some changes, let's run the code. Great, so now we have the value of our variable being printed every frame of our sketch. Ooh, okay, so we're still going past this. Let's run this again now. Let's have a look and work out where we want to stop drawing, or where we want to stop the growth of the circle. Okay, so somewhere around the 340, we'll try going to 360. Seems to be about the right time. If you wanted to be able to look at this in more detail, you could lower the frame rate of your draw function. I think you probably covered that in tutorials, otherwise you can look it up in processing documentation, but we're going to carry on now with the constant of circle size max of equaling 360. Excellent. Set our constant. Now we need to stop the circle from growing. So let's jump in here. We're going to wrap our increment in an if statement. I'm going to say circle size, while circle size is less than circle size max. Increase the circle size. So, made a change. Always remember to save your code, although it is helpful if you're logged in. And we'll watch what happens. Circle size is increasing. And sure enough, we hit 360 and it stops, just as we planned. We've been moving in small steps. We're making steady progress here. Okay, what are we up to next? Circle's growing. Now I want to shrink again. So how are we going to do that? Let's think about that for a second, shall we? We could create a Boolean toggle, or we could perhaps, which is what I think I'm going to do this time, we're going to go with changing what's being added to the circle each time. So we're going to say circle growth. We're going to make that equal to a positive value, 1. So we're going to start by growing. And then we're going to jump down here and we're going to say circle growth plus equal, so circle size equals circle size plus circle growth. And then we can create a condition that when, and so in this case, now we want to create, so now we want to change our conditions. We want to add that always, but we want to say when circle growth, oh, so when the circle size is greater than circle size max, now we want to change it to shrink. So we've made some changes. Let's run it, see what happens. Great, so we're growing up, increasing its size. Now we're going to hit 360 and our circle is going to shrink back down. Oh, well, it doesn't stop. It is regrowing, but as you can see, we've got a negative value. So there's nothing, it's just going to keep growing and explode off the edge of the canvas. Okay, so in this case, let me remember my JavaScript. Excellent. So in this case, let's add an Elsif clause, so a second clause to our statement, and we're going to say, because we want to have the inverse now, so we're going to say when it gets to the circle minimum. And so we're going to fix it up in a second. It's going to drop our circle min over here. Let's say the smallest size we want it to reach is 10. And so we're going to fix this up over here. And we're going to now set circle growth to a positive value. So circle growth equals 1. And we're going to set this so that oh, got elifs in JavaScript. Many languages have different else syntax. And sometimes you get a little bit confused when you jump between languages. So circle growth now will be set to a positive when the circle size is less than the circle size minimum. Let's see what happens. Syntax error. Well, apparently I have forgotten enough JavaScript after all this that, it's Elsif. Okay, there you go. You've already seen me try 3 different varieties of else statements. Great. So we expand, we shrink, and let's see, sure enough, case over here caught, and now the circle expands. Again, now it's going to shrink again and expand again. And so, for example, if we wanted to test this out a little bit further, we could keep an eye on what our circle growth variable was doing by adding in growth and grabbing our circle growth value, and we would probably drop this down to 30 down. Whoop. That didn't work as planned. There you go. Small changes, you can catch errors pretty quickly. So as you can see here, the circle stays 1, then it drops to -1, and hits the bottom, swaps back to +1. Great. So from that example, you can see how by working with small chunks and by making sure we can see what's happening in our sketch, we can slowly but surely build towards the sketch we have envisioned. We broke it down into smaller problems, made small changes, and fixed errors as they appeared. So by taking this kind of gradual approach, it meant that we made relatively consistent progress towards the goal of finishing our sketch. Whereas if we just written it all out in one go, you've all experienced this. There's always more and more errors that creep in. And so this is a strategy to try and help be as effective as possible. Now, it can take a bit of discipline to work in these small pieces, these small chunks. It takes a bit of practice, but keep working at it, and before you know it, you'll be coding much faster and far more effectively. All the best with your sketches the rest of the course, and hopefully some impressive generative artworks or apps, games in the future. Bye.